The sun was setting over the small village, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. But inside Hassan's house there was no beauty to be found, only worry lines on a father's face and the sound of creditors knocking on the door every single day. Hassan was once a successful merchant. People respected him. His shop was always full of customers. But life has a way of changing things. Bad business decisions, a few failed trades, and suddenly everything came crashing down. Now he owed money to almost everyone in the village. The biggest debt? That belonged to Rashid, the cruelest landlord anyone had ever known. Rashid wasn't just rich. He was the kind of man who enjoyed watching others suffer. He owned half the village and he made sure everyone knew it. People bowed their heads when he passed by, not out of respect but out of fear. And Hassan owed him more money than he could ever repay in 3 lifetimes. In Hassan's home lived his daughter, Amina. She was 20 years old, with a gentle voice and a kind heart. But Amina had been blind since the day she was born. In that village, in those times, people saw disability as a curse. They whispered behind closed doors. They said she would never marry. They called her a burden. Even her own father sometimes looked at her with disappointment in his eyes, though he never said it out loud. One afternoon, Rashid came to Hassan's house. He didn't knock. He just walked in like he owned the place, which honestly he almost did. Hassan jumped up from his seat, nervous and sweating. "You know why I'm here," Rashid said, settling into the best chair without being invited. "Your debt." "It's been long enough." Hassan's hand shook. "I need more time, please. Just a few more months." Rashid laughed, but there was no humor in it. "More time? You've had time. What you need is a miracle." He paused, looking around the simple house. Then his eyes landed on Amina, who sat quietly in the corner, listening. "Actually, I have an idea. A way to clear your entire debt." Hassan's heart jumped with hope. "Anything." "I'll do anything." "Good." Rashid leaned forward. "Do you remember Yusuf? The carpenter who lives at the edge of the village?" Hassan nodded slowly. Everyone knew Yusuf. He was a quiet man, kept to himself mostly. A few years ago, he had challenged Rashid over some land dispute. Yusuf had been right and the village elders had sided with him. Rashid never forgot that humiliation. "I want you to arrange a marriage," Rashid continued, his voice cold and calculated. "Between your daughter and Yusuf." Hassan's mouth fell open. He looked at Amina, then back at Rashid. "But why would you want that?" Rashid's smile was like a snake's. "Let's just say it's time Yusuf understood the consequences of disrespecting me. He'll be stuck with a blind wife. Everyone will pity him. Every day he'll remember the price of standing against me." He stood up, straightening his expensive coat. "Agree to this and your debt is gone, all of it. You'll even get your daughter off your hands. 2 problems solved at once." The words hit Hassan like stones. This wasn't mercy. This was cruelty disguised as a solution. Rashid was using Amina as a weapon, a punishment for Yusuf, and the worst part? Hassan was so desperate, so trapped by his debts that he actually considered it. That night, Hassan couldn't sleep. He walked around his house, looking at his daughter who slept peacefully, unaware of the deal being made around her life. He thought about his late wife and what she would say if she knew what he was planning. Shame burned in his chest, but the creditors kept coming. The threats kept growing. Hassan had no way out. No money, no options. Just this one terrible choice that Rashid had dangled in front of him like bait. 3 days later, Hassan agreed. The news spread through the village like wildfire. People gathered in small groups, whispering and gossiping. "Did you hear? Hassan is marrying off his blind daughter to Yusuf." Some laughed. Some felt sorry for Yusuf. No one asked how Amina felt about any of it. Rashid made sure everyone knew this was his doing. He told the story at the market, at the mosque, anywhere people would listen. He wanted everyone to see his revenge. He wanted Yusuf to feel humiliated before the wedding even happened. But here's what Rashid didn't know about Yusuf. The carpenter wasn't like most men in the village. He didn't care much about what people thought. He lived by his own code, his own sense of right and wrong, and he definitely wasn't the type of man to be afraid of Rashid's games. When Hassan came to Yusuf's workshop with the proposal, the carpenter was working on a beautiful wooden door. He kept sanding the wood, listening carefully as Hassan stumbled through his explanation. The merchant couldn't look Yusuf in the eye. He mentioned the debt, mentioned Rashid, mentioned everything except what should have mattered most. Yusuf finally put down his tools. You haven't told me anything about your daughter herself. Hassan blinked, confused. What do you mean? I mean, what is she like? What does she enjoy? What are her thoughts on this marriage? Hassan shifted uncomfortably. She's blind. She stays home. She's quiet. That's not what I asked, Yusuf said gently but firmly. Does she want to marry me? The question hung in the air. Hassan realized with a sinking feeling that he had never asked Amina. Not once. He had discussed her future, her life, her marriage, without ever including her in the conversation. I don't know, Hassan finally admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Yusuf nodded slowly. Then before I give you my answer, I need to meet her. I need to speak with her directly. If she agrees, we can discuss this further. If she doesn't, then there's nothing more to talk about. Hassan was shocked. No one had ever asked for Amina's opinion before. But he agreed because what choice did he have? The meeting was arranged for the next evening. And as the sun began to set again over that small village, Amina had no idea that her entire life was about to change in ways no one, especially not Rashid, could have ever predicted. The evening air was cool when Yusuf arrived at Hassan's house. Amina sat in the courtyard, her hands folded in her lap, her heart beating so fast she thought everyone could hear it. She had been told that a man was coming to meet her, a carpenter named Yusuf, but no one explained why. No one prepared her for what this meeting actually meant. Her father was pacing inside the house. She could hear his footsteps, nervous and quick. He had been acting strange all week, but then again her father had been strange for months now. Ever since the money problem started, he barely looked at her. Sometimes Amina wondered if he blamed her for being another mouth to feed, another responsibility he couldn't afford. When Yusuf entered the courtyard, Amina heard his footsteps. They were different from her father's, steady, calm, confident, but not arrogant. She couldn't see him, but she had learned to understand people through sounds, through the way they moved and breathed. Hassan rushed forward. Please sit here. Can I get you tea, water? Water would be nice, thank you, Yusuf replied. His voice was warm, like honey. Not too deep, not too high, just comfortable. There was an awkward silence. Amina could feel both men looking at her. She was used to this. People always stared, some with pity, some with curiosity, some with that uncomfortable mix of both. Then Yusuf did something unexpected. He walked over to where Amina was sitting and knelt down so they were at the same level. Hello, Amina. My name is Yusuf. I asked your father if I could speak with you. Is that all right? Amina was startled. People usually talked about her, around her, but rarely to her directly. Especially not like this, with such respect. She nodded. Yes, it's all right. Your father told me there's a proposal for marriage between us, Yusuf continued. His voice was gentle but honest. But before anything else, I wanted to meet you. To talk with you. Not about you, but with you. Because this is about your life, and you should have a say in it. Amina's throat felt tight. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. In the background, Hassan coughed nervously. He clearly hadn't expected this kind of conversation. I know you can't see me, Yusuf said, but maybe I can tell you a bit about myself. I'm a carpenter. I work with wood, making furniture, doors, windows, things like that. I live in a small house at the edge of the village. I was married before, but my wife passed away 3 years ago. We had no children. I live alone now. Amina listened carefully. There was no boasting in his words, no false promises, just simple truth. I've heard about the arrangement, Yusuf continued. I know about your father's debt to Rashid. I know this whole thing is more about Rashid trying to humiliate me than about any real matchmaking. He paused. But I don't care about Rashid's games. What I care about is whether you want this, whether you're being forced into something you don't want. Amina felt tears pricking her eyes. All her life, she had been told she was lucky anyone would even consider her. Lucky that her family kept her. Lucky to have a roof over her head. And here was this man, this stranger, asking what she wanted. Can I ask you something? Yusuf said softly. Yes, Amina whispered. What do you want from life? If you could choose anything, what would it be? The question was so unexpected that Amina didn't know how to answer at first. No one had ever asked her that. Ever. She thought about all the years of sitting in corners, of being told to stay quiet, to not be a bother, to accept whatever life gave her because she should be grateful for anything at all. I want, she started, her voice shaking. I want to be useful. I want to matter. Not be a burden, she took a breath. I want someone to see me as a person, not as a problem to be solved. In the background, Hassan made a small pained sound. Maybe he was finally hearing what his silence had done to his daughter all these years. Yusuf was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You are a person. You are not a burden. Being blind doesn't change that. He shifted, and Amina heard him settling into a more comfortable position. Let me be honest with you, Amina, I'm not a rich man. My house is simple. Life with me would be simple too. But I promise you this. If you agree to this marriage, I will never treat you as less than you are. You will have dignity in my home. You will have a voice. You will be my wife, not my charity case. Amina's hands trembled. This wasn't the conversation she expected. She expected pity, maybe. Or duty, but not this. Not respect. Can I think about it? She asked quietly. Of course, Yusuf said immediately. This is a big decision. Take all the time you need. Hassan stepped forward then, his voice tight with anxiety. But the debt. Rashid said, The debt can wait a few days, Yusuf interrupted firmly. This is about Amina's future. She deserves time to think. That night, after Yusuf left, Amina sat alone in her room. She thought about everything. About her father's debts and Rashid's cruelty. About Yusuf's calm voice and respectful words. About the choice she had been given. A choice she never thought she would have. She knew the truth. If she said no, her father would be ruined. The debts would crush him. And she would remain here, a burden, blamed for his suffering. But if she said yes, she would be walking into the unknown. Life with a stranger. A man she couldn't even see. But here's what decided it for her. Yusuf had asked what she wanted. No one else had ever asked. And maybe, just maybe, a man who would ask that question was a man who would keep his promises. 3 days later, Amina told her father she would agree to the marriage. Hassan's relief was visible. He hugged her, thanking her over and over, though both of them knew she wasn't doing this entirely by choice. She was doing it because there were no good options, only less terrible ones. When Yusuf was told of her decision, he came back to the house. This time he brought something with him, a small wooden bird, carved from smooth olive wood. He placed it in Amina's hands. I made this for you, he said, so you know that I heard what you said. You want to matter. You want to be useful. You already are both of those things, but I will make sure you never forget it. Amina's fingers traced the wooden bird. Every feather was carved with incredible detail. She could feel the care that went into it. And for the first time in a very long time, she smiled. The wedding was set for 2 weeks later. The village buzzed with gossip. Rashid told everyone who would listen that he had successfully punished Yusuf. People whispered that the carpenter must be desperate or foolish to accept such a bride. But none of them saw what Amina held in her hands. A wooden bird that represented something they couldn't understand. A promise. A beginning. A chance at something none of them expected. Respect. The morning of the wedding arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze. But inside Hassan's house, the atmosphere was anything but peaceful. Amina sat still while the village women prepared her, their hands working through her hair, draping the simple wedding dress over her shoulders. They talked around her, not to her, as if she was a doll being dressed up. Such a shame, one woman whispered, though not quietly enough. A blind bride. That carpenter must be a saint or a fool. Rashid says it's punishment, another added. For when Yusuf challenged him about that land, Amina said nothing. She had learned long ago that defending herself only made things worse. People believed what they wanted to believe. But her hands gripped the wooden bird Yusuf had given her, hidden in the folds of her dress. That small carved gift reminded her that at least one person saw her differently. At the mosque, the wedding ceremony was small. Hassan had invited only necessary witnesses, too ashamed to make it a celebration. But Rashid came anyway, uninvited, with several of his friends. They stood at the back, whispering and smirking, waiting to see the carpenter's humiliation. When Amina entered, guided by her father's reluctant hand, she could hear the whispers growing louder. She couldn't see the looks of pity, the shaking heads, the uncomfortable glances, but she felt them. Every single one pressed against her like weights. Then she heard different footsteps approaching, steady, calm. Yusuf. He stopped beside her, and suddenly the weight felt lighter. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, and there was no pity in his voice. Just simple truth. The imam began the ceremony reciting the traditional words. Amina's heart pounded. This was real. This was happening. In minutes, she would be married to a man she had met only once. Her life would change forever. Then came the vows. The imam finished the standard prayers and looked at Yusuf, expecting the usual formal acceptance. But Yusuf asked for permission to speak. The room went silent. Yusuf turned toward Amina. Even though she couldn't see him, she could feel his presence beside her, solid and unwavering. Then he spoke, his voice clear and strong enough for everyone to hear. "Amina, I make this promise to you before God and before all these witnesses. I give you my name, my home, and my word. You will never be treated as less than you are. You will never be a burden. You will never be invisible. In my house you will have dignity, respect, and a voice. This I promise you from this day forward." The mosque went absolutely silent. No one had expected this. Marriages were transactions, arrangements, duties. They weren't supposed to sound like this. They weren't supposed to feel like this. Amina's hands trembled. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and for once they weren't tears of sadness. Someone had just promised to see her. Really see her. Not as a blind girl or a burden or a punishment, but as a person worthy of dignity. "I accept," she whispered. Behind them, Rashid's smirk had frozen on his face. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Yusuf was supposed to look defeated, trapped, humiliated. But instead he stood tall, speaking words of respect and commitment that made Rashid's cruelty look exactly like what it was. Small, petty, pathetic. The imam completed the ceremony. Yusuf and Amina were now husband and wife. As people came forward to offer congratulations, most of them seemed confused. The carpenter's friends were genuinely happy, clapping him on the back. But others just didn't know what to make of it all. Hassan approached his daughter, guilt written all over his face. "Amina, it's done, father," she said quietly. There was nothing else to say. He had made his choice. Now she had to live with it. Yusuf gently took Amina's hand. "The path from the mosque has 3 steps down, then a flat stone walkway," he said softly. "There's a cart waiting for us at the end. I'll guide you." This was new. Hassan had always just pulled Amina along, expecting her to figure it out. But Yusuf described everything, giving her the information she needed to move with confidence rather than fear. As they walked together toward the cart, Rashid called out from behind them, "Enjoy your prize, carpenter. I hope she's worth clearing Hassan's debt." Yusuf stopped. Amina felt him turn around. For a moment she worried there might be an argument, maybe even a fight. But when Yusuf spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "She's worth more than you could ever understand, Rashid. But then, you've never understood worth beyond money, have you?" The gathered crowd made a collective sound, something between a gasp and a murmur. No one spoke to Rashid like that. No one challenged him so directly. But Yusuf had done it without raising his voice, without anger. He simply stated a truth, and somehow that was more powerful than any insult. Rashid's face turned red, but before he could respond, Yusuf had already turned back around, helping Amina into the cart. They left the mosque together, leaving behind the whispers and stares. The ride to Yusuf's house was quiet. Amina could hear the cartwheels on the dirt road, birds singing in trees she couldn't see, children playing somewhere in the distance. Normal life continuing around her while her own life transformed completely. "Are you afraid?" Yusuf asked gently. Amina thought about it honestly. "Yes, but not of you." "What are you afraid of?" "That I'll disappoint you. That you'll regret this. That I'll be as useless as everyone says." Yusuf was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Everyone was wrong about you, Amina. It might take time for you to believe that. But I'll remind you every day if I have to." The cart stopped. They had arrived at Yusuf's house. Their house now. Yusuf helped Amina down, and as her feet touched the ground, she took a deep breath. This was it. Her new life was beginning. A life where someone had chosen her, not out of duty or debt, but with open eyes and an open heart, where someone had promised her dignity. Back in the village, people were already talking. Some laughed at Yusuf's foolishness. Some felt sorry for both of them. Some, very few, wondered if maybe they had just witnessed something they didn't quite understand yet. Something that looked like weakness but might actually be strength. Rashid went home angry. his revenge having somehow backfired in ways he couldn't explain. He had wanted Yusuf to suffer. Instead, the carpenter seemed content, happy even. How could someone be happy about being saddled with a blind wife? But Rashid didn't understand, and he never would, because he had never understood that a person's worth isn't measured by what they can see or do. It's measured by who they are. And Amina, despite what everyone believed, was worth everything. As the sun set on their wedding day, Yusuf showed Amina around the house, describing every room, every piece of furniture, every corner. He didn't rush. He didn't sigh with impatience. He just helped her learn her new home step by step. And for the first time in her life, Amina felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The first morning in Yusuf's house, Amina woke up confused. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The bed felt different. The sounds were different. Even the air smelled different, like wood and sawdust and something clean she couldn't quite name. Then she remembered. She was married. This was her home now. She sat up carefully, trying to get her bearings. In her father's house, she knew every corner, every step, every obstacle. Here, everything was unknown. She felt lost in a place that was supposed to be hers. "Good morning." Yusuf's voice came from somewhere across the room. "I'm by the door. The window is to your left, and the washing basin is on the table straight ahead, about 6 steps from the bed." Amina relaxed slightly. He was helping her understand the space without making her feel helpless. "Good morning," she replied quietly. "Today, if you're willing, I'd like to show you the whole house," Yusuf said. "Every room where everything is placed. We can take as much time as you need." They spent the entire morning doing exactly that. Yusuf didn't just show her around. He described everything in detail. The kitchen was small but organized. The stove was in the corner. Pots hung on hooks to the left. Spices were stored in carved wooden containers on a shelf, each with a different texture so they could be identified by touch. "I made these last night," Yusuf explained. "This one with the grooves is for salt. The smooth one is sugar. This one with the bumps is for turmeric." Amina ran her fingers over them, amazed. He had thought about this. He had actually prepared for her arrival, thinking about how she would navigate this space. In the main room, Yusuf had moved all the furniture to create clear pathways. "Nothing is in the middle of the room," he explained. "Everything is against the walls. You can walk straight through without obstacles." He showed her the workshop too, though he warned her about the sharp tools and made sure she understood where the dangerous areas were. "You're welcome here any time," he said. "This is your home too. Just let me know when you're coming so I can make sure it's safe." Over the next few days, Yusuf carved small wooden markers and placed them at doorways and corners. Smooth wood meant a safe passage. Notched wood meant stairs or a step down. Amina could touch them as she moved through the house, creating a map in her mind. But the learning wasn't just one-sided. Yusuf learned too. He learned that Amina needed verbal warnings before he touched her or she'd startle. He learned that she could cook but needed ingredients organized in a specific way. He learned that she was scared of being judged for making mistakes. That fear showed itself one afternoon when Amina was trying to prepare tea. She was counting steps, reaching for the pot, being so careful. But she miscalculated and her hand hit the teapot. It crashed to the floor, shattering into pieces. Amina froze. Her whole body tensed, waiting for the reaction. In her father's house, breaking something meant angry words, heavy sighs, reminders of how clumsy and useless she was. But Yusuf just said, "Stay still for a moment. There's broken pottery around you. Let me get a broom." He cleaned up the pieces, then gently guided Amina away from the spot. "Are you hurt? Did any of it cut you?" "No," Amina whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I ruined your pot." "It's just a pot," Yusuf said simply. "I can make another one, or we can buy one from the market. It's not important, but I broke it." "I'm always breaking things, always causing problem," Yusuf interrupted gently. "Amina, listen to me. Everyone breaks things. I broke 2 bowls last week because I was distracted. It happens. It's not because you're blind. It's because you're human." He paused. "We'll adjust. Maybe we need to reorganize the kitchen. Maybe the pot was in a bad spot. This is our home, and we're both still learning how to share it." Amina felt tears on her cheeks. "You're not angry?" "Why would I be angry? You were trying to make tea for us. That's kind, not clumsy." His voice was warm. "Besides, I'm the one who should apologize. I put the pot there without thinking about whether it was in a convenient spot for you. This was new." This was so completely different from everything Amina had known. Mistakes weren't punished here. They were just fixed, learned from, and then everyone moved on. Slowly, carefully, Amina began to relax. She started to move through the house with more confidence. She learned where the herbs grew in the small garden by their smell, and the texture of their leaves. Mint was smooth. Rosemary was rough and pine-scented. Basil was soft and tender. Yusuf started consulting her on everything. "I'm thinking about building a new shelf for the kitchen. Where do you think would be most useful? Or we need to buy grain from the market. Which vendor do you prefer?" At first, Amina was confused by the questions. Why did her opinion matter? But Yusuf was serious. He actually wanted to know what she thought. He actually valued her input. One evening, about a month after the wedding, Amina was working on something in the corner of the main room. Yusuf came home from his workshop and found her sitting with a pile of fabric scraps and thread. "What are you making?" he asked, Amina's hands stilled. I was just playing around."
"I didn't mean to waste materials, and you're not wasting anything."
"I'm curious. What is it?" She held up the fabric. She had been sewing pieces together, creating patterns by texture. Rough fabric next to smooth, thick next to thin. "I can't see colors," she explained hesitantly, "but I can feel textures. I thought maybe I could make something interesting with different fabrics." Yusuf picked up the piece and examined it. The stitching was perfect. The pattern was creative and surprisingly beautiful. "Amina, this is really good." "Really?" She sounded doubtful. "Really? Have you done this before?" "Sometimes at my father's house. But he always said it was a waste of time, that I should focus on staying out of the way." Yusuf was quiet for a moment, and Amina could sense his anger. Not at her, but at how she had been treated. "Well, I think it's wonderful," he said finally. "And if you enjoy it, you should do more. Maybe you could make cushion covers for the house. Or curtains." "You'd want that? Things made by me?" "Of course I would. Why wouldn't I?" Amina didn't have an answer. Or rather, she had too many answers, all of them painful memories of being told she couldn't, shouldn't, wouldn't be able to do things properly. But here was Yusuf, telling her the opposite. Showing her the opposite, day after day, in small ways and big ways. He was proving that she was capable, that she mattered, that her contributions had value. The house slowly transformed. It became truly theirs, not just Yusuf's place where Amina lived. She started cooking meals with confidence. She organized the kitchen in ways that made sense to her. She planted herbs in the garden, touching each plant daily to check their growth, and she kept sewing. The more she worked with fabric, the more skilled she became. Her fingers could detect the tiniest differences in thread tension, creating stitches so even and perfect that they looked like machine work. Neighbors started to notice changes too. They saw Yusuf and Amina walking to the market together, Yusuf describing the sights while Amina carried the shopping basket. They saw Amina hanging laundry, her movements careful but confident. They saw a couple working together, not a man burdened with a helpless wife. But old beliefs die hard. Some people still whispered, still pitied Yusuf, still thought Amina was useless. They couldn't see what was actually happening because they didn't want to. They had already decided what the truth was, and they weren't interested in anything that contradicted it. Rashid especially refused to accept what he was seeing. He had wanted Yusuf to suffer. Instead, the carpenter seemed happier than ever. It didn't make sense. How could anyone be happy in such a situation? But late at night in their simple home, Yusuf and Amina would sit together. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just enjoyed the comfortable silence. And in those moments, Amina realized something that would have shocked everyone in the village. She wasn't just surviving in this marriage. She was actually happy. For the first time in her entire life, she was genuinely, truly happy, and that was worth more than all the sight in the world. 3 months after the wedding, the village market was buzzing with the usual morning activity. Vendors called out their prices, children ran between stalls, and neighbors stopped to gossip. It was a normal day except for one thing that made people pause and stare. Amina was walking through the market. Alone. Well, not entirely alone. She carried a walking stick that Yusuf had carved for her. It was smooth and perfectly balanced, with small carved patterns she could feel under her fingers. But she wasn't clinging to anyone's arm. She was navigating the market independently, tapping her stick gently on the ground, moving with careful confidence. Behind her, at a respectful distance, Yusuf followed. He wasn't hovering. He wasn't treating her like a child who might wander off. He was just there, available if needed, but letting her do this herself. Fresh tomatoes. Best in the market, a vendor called out. Amina turned toward the voice, using it as a guide. She approached the stall, her stick finding the edge. How much for a kilo? She asked. The vendor, a woman named Fatima, stammered slightly. She wasn't used to Amina coming to her stall directly. 10 rupees. That's higher than last week, Amina said calmly. She had been listening carefully to prices every time Yusuf shopped. She knew what things cost. Fatima blinked, surprised. Well, yes, but the quality is better this week. May I feel them? Amina asked. The vendor placed a tomato in Amina's outstretched hand. Amina's fingers moved over it expertly, feeling for soft spots, checking the firmness, the smoothness of the skin. Her other senses had become so sharp that she could often judge produce quality better than people who could see it. This one has a soft spot on the bottom, Amina said, but they do feel fresh otherwise. I'll take a kilo for 8 rupees. A small crowd had gathered, watching this interaction with fascination. They had never seen Amina like this, confident, capable, bargaining like any other customer. Fatima, caught off guard but also somewhat impressed, agreed. 8 rupees it is. Amina carefully counted out the coins from her small purse, another thing Yusuf had made for her with different compartments for different coin values. She placed them in Fatima's hand and waited while the vendor bagged the tomatoes. Thank you, Amina said with a smile, placing the bag in her basket. As she moved to the next stall, people whispered, but this time the whispers were different, less pitying, more curious. What else could this blind girl do? How had she learned to navigate the market? And was that really the same helpless woman who had gotten married a few months ago? At the fabric stall, Amina spent a long time feeling different materials. The vendor, an old man named Karim, watched with interest as she ran her fingers over cotton, silk, and wool. What are you looking for? He asked. Something with texture, Amina replied. Different weaves, different thicknesses. I'm working on a project. What kind of project? Amina hesitated. She wasn't sure if she should share. But something about Karim's genuine interest made her continue. I'm making cushion covers, using different textures to create patterns. Can you really do that? Without seeing? I can feel, Amina said simply. And feeling is enough. Karim pulled out several different fabrics. Try these. This one is rough cotton. This is smooth linen. This has a raised pattern woven into it. Amina's face lit up as she felt the fabrics. These are perfect. How much? They negotiated prices and Amina bought several pieces. As she paid and prepared to leave, Karim said something unexpected. Bring me one of your cushion covers when you finish. I'd like to see this pattern you're making. Amina smiled. I will. Not every interaction was positive, though. At the spice stall, a man named Ibrahim sneered when she approached. Shouldn't you have someone helping you? You might buy the wrong thing. Before Amina could respond, another voice cut in. It was Fatima, the tomato vendor. She bought for me just fine. Better than some people who can see perfectly well. Ibrahim looked surprised but shut his mouth. Other vendors nodded in agreement. Amina was becoming a regular customer, and they were starting to appreciate her business and her attitude. Yusuf, still keeping his distance, smiled to himself. He knew this hadn't been easy for Amina. The first few times she had wanted to try going to the market, she had been terrified. They had practiced routes, practiced interactions, practiced everything, but she had been determined to do this, to prove to herself that she could. As Amina finished her shopping and headed home, she walked past a group of women sitting in the shade. They stopped talking and watched her pass. One of them, a young woman named Zainab, spoke up. How does she do it? Walk around like that? An older woman, Sultana, shook her head. That husband of hers must have the patience of a saint, teaching her everything, watching over her. But another woman, Nadia, who had been watching more carefully, said something different. I don't think he's teaching her like you'd teach a child. Look at how he follows. He's not leading. He's just there in case she needs him. That's different. The conversation continued, but the tone had shifted. People were starting to notice that the relationship between Yusuf and Amina wasn't what they had expected. It wasn't pity and burden. It was partnership and respect. Word spread through the village. Some people were impressed. Some were confused. And some, like Rashid, were angry. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Yusuf was supposed to be miserable. The blind wife was supposed to be a punishment, not a functional part of society. One day, about a week after Amina's market debut, a wealthy woman named Bilquis came to Yusuf's workshop. She was known for being demanding and particular about her furniture orders. "I need to speak with your wife," Bilquis said. Yusuf looked up from his work, surprised. "Amina, why?" "I heard she's making cushion covers. Unusual ones. I want to see them." Yusuf led Bilquis to the house where Amina was working on her latest project. She heard the footsteps and the unfamiliar voice and stood up nervously. "This is Bilquis," Yusuf explained. "She wants to see your work." Amina brought out several completed cushion covers. Bilquis examined them closely. The patterns were unlike anything she had seen before. Different textures created visual interest in unexpected ways. The stitching was immaculate, perfectly even and strong. "You made these?" Bilquis asked, her voice skeptical. "Yes," Amina replied quietly. "Without seeing them, I don't need to see them. I can feel if the stitches are right, if the pattern is balanced." Bilquis held up one of the covers to the light. She turned it around, examining every angle. Finally, she spoke. "I'll pay you to make 6 covers for my sitting room. I'll provide the fabrics." "Can you do that?" Amina was stunned. "You want to pay me? For my work?" "Of course. This is quality work. Why wouldn't I pay?" It was the first time anyone had ever wanted to pay Amina for something she made. The first time her skills had value beyond just keeping herself occupied. She felt tears threatening but pushed them back. "Yes," she said, her voice stronger. "Yes, I can do that." They negotiated a price and Bilquis left with one of the cushion covers as a sample. As soon as she was gone, Amina turned to where she knew Yusuf was standing. "Did that really just happen?" she asked, her voice shaking with excitement and disbelief. Yusuf laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "It really did. You have your first paying customer." "I have a job," Amina whispered, amazed. "I have actual work that someone wants." That evening, Yusuf made a special dinner to celebrate. As they ate, he told her, "You know what's going to happen now, don't you?" "What?" "Bilquis is going to show those cushion covers to everyone she knows. And they're all going to want them too. You're going to be very busy." Amina laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Good, I want to be busy. I want to work. I want to contribute." "You already contribute," Yusuf said gently. "You always have. But now everyone else is going to see it too." And he was right. Within 2 weeks, 3 more women had come asking for cushion covers. Then someone wanted a table runner. Then curtains. Word spread that the blind carpenter's wife could create beautiful things. Things no one else in the village could make. The gossip changed. Instead of pitying Yusuf, people started to respect both of them. Instead of seeing Amina as a burden, they saw her as skilled, useful, valuable. Rashid heard all of this and seethed. His punishment had turned into success. His mockery had become respect. Everything had gone wrong, but for Amina and Yusuf, everything had gone right. Not because life was perfect, but because they had built something together. Something based on mutual respect, patience, and the simple belief that everyone deserves dignity. The village was starting to understand that too. Slowly, one cushion cover at a time. 6 months into their marriage, something extraordinary happened. It started on an ordinary evening when Yusuf came home from his workshop to find Amina sitting in the courtyard, completely absorbed in her work. Her fingers moved rapidly over a piece of fabric, the needle going in and out with perfect precision. But it wasn't just the speed that caught his attention. It was the pattern emerging under her hands. Intricate, detailed, unlike anything he had seen before. Flowers seemed to bloom across the fabric, their petals created through different stitching techniques, leaves twisted and turned with such realism that they almost looked ready to move. Yusuf stood quietly, not wanting to disturb her. He watched as she worked entirely by feel, her fingers checking the tension of each stitch, the placement of each pattern element. There was no hesitation in her movements. She knew exactly what she was creating, even though she couldn't see it. When Amina finally paused to rest her hands, Yusuf spoke softly. "Amina, what you're making?" "It's incredible," she smiled, a bit shyly. "You think so?" "I've been experimenting with embroidery. The cushion covers are nice, but I wanted to try something more detailed. May I see it? Yusuf asked. Amina handed him the fabric. In the fading evening light, Yusuf examined it closely. The embroidery was masterful. Each stitch was perfectly placed. The design had a flow and symmetry that shouldn't have been possible without seeing it. The texture work alone was amazing, but the overall composition was stunning. How do you do this? Yusuf asked, genuinely amazed. How do you know where each stitch goes? Amina thought about how to explain it. I count, she said. I count stitches, measure with my fingers. I can feel when something is off balance, when one side has more weight than the other. And I remember patterns in my mind, like a map. Once I start a design, I can hold the whole picture in my head, just not as you would see it. You have a gift, Yusuf said quietly. Amina laughed, but there was old pain in the sound. My father never thought so. He said I was wasting thread and fabric. Your father was wrong about many things, Yusuf replied firmly. This is real talent, Amina, the kind that people would pay well for. You really think people would want this? I know they would. The next day, Yusuf took a piece of Amina's embroidery to the market. He showed it to Karim, the fabric vendor, and to several other merchants. Their reactions were all the same. Shock, then amazement, then immediate interest. Your wife made this? Karim asked, holding the embroidered cloth up to examine it in the sunlight. The blind girl? My wife made this, Yusuf corrected gently but firmly. And yes, she cannot see. But her hands can do what most people's eyes cannot. Within a week, orders started coming in. A wealthy merchant from the next town wanted embroidered shawls. A bride's family wanted decorated wedding clothes. Even the local imam's wife commissioned a prayer cloth with detailed patterns. Amina worked steadily, carefully, creating pieces that left people speechless. Her lack of sight had forced her to develop other senses to an extraordinary degree. She could feel variations in fabric texture that others missed. Her sense of spacing and symmetry was perfect because she measured everything precisely, never relying on visual approximation. But what really set her work apart was the texture itself. Because she experienced the world through touch, her embroidery had a dimensional quality that was unique. She used different types of stitches, different thread thicknesses, creating patterns that were meant to be felt as much as seen. One day, an elderly woman named Sakina came to their house. She was wealthy, influential, and known throughout the region for her refined taste. She had heard about Amina's work and wanted to see it for herself. Amina brought out several pieces, her hands trembling slightly with nerves. This could be a big opportunity or a crushing rejection. Sakina examined each piece in silence. She held them close, turned them around, even closed her eyes and felt the stitching with her fingertips. Finally she spoke, remarkable. I've seen embroidery from the best artisans in the capital city. But this is different, special. She looked at Amina directly. How much would you charge to teach my granddaughter? She's learning the craft, but she needs a master teacher. Amina was stunned. Teach me? But I'm blind? Sakina finished. So what? Your hands know what they're doing. That's what matters. My granddaughter can see perfectly fine, and her embroidery is still mediocre. She needs to learn what you know. This was beyond anything Amina had imagined. Not just selling her work, but teaching others. Being recognized not as a blind woman who happened to sew, but as a skilled artisan in her own right. She agreed, and soon she had her first student. Then another. Then several more. Women came from all over to learn from her, including some who were losing their sight to age or illness. To them, Amina was proof that blindness wasn't the end of usefulness or creativity. The money started coming in steadily. First just a little, covering household expenses, then more. Then enough that Amina was earning as much as Yusuf made from carpentry. Then more than that. One evening, Amina counted the money she had earned that month and realized something astonishing. Yusuf, I made more this month than you did. There was a moment of silence. Amina worried suddenly. Would he be upset? Threatened? Her father would have been. Most men she knew would be, but Yusuf laughed. A genuine, delighted laugh. That's wonderful. We should celebrate. Maybe we can finally fix the roof before the rainy season. You're not bothered? Amina asked carefully. Bothered? Why would I be bothered? We're partners, Amina. Your success is our success. Money doesn't care who earns it, and neither do I. He paused. I'm proud of you. Incredibly proud. Amina felt tears welling up. In her old life, she had been told repeatedly that she was worthless, a drain on resources, someone who could never contribute. Now she was not just contributing, she was thriving. Word of her success spread far beyond the village. People in the capital city heard about the blind embroiderer, whose work was unlike anything else. Wealthy families wanted pieces made by her. Fashion merchants wanted to sell her designs, but the most meaningful moment came when a mother brought her young daughter to meet Amina. The girl was about 8 years old and had been blind since birth. "My daughter thinks she can't do anything useful," the mother explained, her voice thick with emotion. "She thinks being blind means her life is over before it begins. But I heard about you and I thought, maybe you could talk to her." Amina sat with the little girl, holding her small hands. "What do you like to do?" she asked gently. "Nothing," the girl whispered. "I can't do anything." "That's not true. You can do many things. You just have to learn differently than others." "Can you feel things?" "Yes. Can you hear?" "Yes." "Can you remember?" "Yes." "Then you have everything you need," Amina said softly. "I can't see either. But I can work. I can earn money. I can teach. I can create beautiful things. Not despite being blind, but sometimes because of it. My fingers feel things that others miss. Yours will too." The girl's face transformed with hope. "Really, I can really do things? Important things?" "Really," Amina promised. "Being blind is not the end of anything. It's just a different beginning," the mother cried. The girl smiled, and Amina felt something shift in her own heart. She wasn't just supporting herself anymore. She was showing others what was possible. She was changing minds, opening doors, proving that worth comes from who you are, not from what you can or cannot see. That evening, Yusuf found her sitting quietly in the courtyard, tears rolling down her cheeks. "What's wrong?" he asked, concerned. "Nothing's wrong," Amina said, her voice choked with emotion. "Everything's right. For the first time in my life, everything is exactly right." Yusuf sat beside her, taking her hand. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, casting shadows neither of them could see. But they didn't need to see the beauty around them. They could feel it. In the warm air, in the sound of evening birds, in the peaceful quiet of a home built on respect and love, Amina had found her gift. Not despite her blindness, but through it. And in doing so, she had given gifts to others. Hope, possibility, proof that every person has value, if only someone takes the time to see it, or in Amina's case, to feel it. 2 years after the wedding that was meant to be a punishment, Rashid returned to the village. He had been traveling for business, visiting other towns and cities, and in his absence he had assumed everything would be as he left it. He expected to return to find Yusuf broken down, the marriage a disaster, his revenge complete and satisfying. What he found instead made his blood boil. The first thing he noticed was Yusuf's workshop. It had expanded. There was a new section built onto the side with better tools and more space. Business was clearly doing well. That wasn't supposed to happen. A man burdened with a useless wife shouldn't be prospering. Then he heard the gossip. Everywhere he went, people were talking about Amina, the blind carpenter's wife who had become the most sought-after embroiderer in the region. Women traveled from far away just to commission her work or learn from her. She was earning money, real money, respect, recognition. Rashid's carefully planned revenge had not just failed. It had spectacularly backfired. The couple he meant to destroy were thriving. They were happy. They were successful. And everyone in the village knew it. At the market, Rashid overheard 2 women talking while they shopped. "Did you see the shawl Amina made for the mayor's wife? Absolutely stunning. I heard she's teaching a class next month. I'm thinking of joining. You know what's amazing? She makes more money than most of the men in this village. And her husband couldn't be prouder." Rashid clenched his fists. This wasn't right. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had given Hassan's blind daughter to Yusuf as an insult, a burden, a punishment for daring to stand up to him. But somehow it had turned into something else entirely. He needed to fix this. He needed to restore the natural order of things, where his word mattered and his revenge stuck. Rashid started spreading new rumors. He told anyone who would listen that Yusuf was only staying with Amina for her money now. That the marriage was still a sham, just for different reasons. That Yusuf was probably spending all of Amina's earnings on himself while she did all the work. But the village wasn't buying it. Not this time. Have you seen them together? Fatima, the vegetable vendor, said when Rashid tried to gossip with her. They walked to the market hand in hand. He describes everything to her like it's the first time he's seeing it too. That's not a man using someone. Besides, added Karim the fabric vendor, Yusuf's business was already good before Amina's embroidery took off. He doesn't need her money. They're just partners. Rashid tried a different approach. He went to Hassan, Amina's father, thinking he could stir up trouble there. Your daughter has forgotten where she came from, Rashid said, sitting in Hassan's courtyard uninvited. She's making all this money, and what has she given you? Nothing. After you raised her all those years. But Hassan had changed too. The guilt of what he had done to Amina had been eating at him for 2 years. He had seen how she flourished away from him, how happy she was, and it had forced him to confront some painful truths about himself. She owes me nothing, Hassan said quietly. I'm the one who owes her. I treated her as a burden when she was a blessing. I gave her away like unwanted goods. He looked at Rashid with something close to disgust. And I did it to clear a debt to you, a debt you've used to control and hurt people for years. Watch your tongue, old man, Rashid warned. Or what? You'll do to me what you tried to do to Yusuf? How did that work out for you? Hassan stood up. I think you should leave my house. Rashid left, his anger growing. His own schemes were being used against him. People were seeing through him. His power in the village was slipping, and it was all because of that carpenter and his blind wife. He decided on a more direct confrontation. One market day, when both Yusuf and Amina were shopping together, Rashid made his move. He walked up to them in front of a crowd of people. Yusuf, Rashid said loudly, ensuring everyone could hear. I've been hearing interesting things. Apparently your wife is quite the businesswoman now. Must be nice living off a woman's earnings. The market went quiet. People stopped what they were doing to watch. Yusuf turned to face Rashid calmly. Good to see you again, Rashid. Yes, my wife is very talented. I'm proud of her success. Proud? Or just comfortable letting her do all the work while you enjoy the benefits? Amina spoke up, her voice clear and steady. My husband works as hard as he always has. His carpentry business is doing well. We both contribute to our household as partners should. Partners? Rashid laughed mockingly. You're blind. You're lucky anyone would take you at all. And now you're pretending to be some kind of skilled artisan? Please, Yusuf probably does half the work for you, the crowd murmured. This was going too far, even for Rashid. But before Yusuf could respond, someone else spoke up. It was Sakina, the influential elderly woman who had been one of Amina's first important customers. Rashid, I've commissioned multiple pieces from Amina. I've watched her work with my own eyes. She does everything herself, and she does it better than artisans who can see perfectly well. Sakina's voice carried authority that even Rashid couldn't ignore. The only person who looks foolish here is you. Others joined in. Bilquis, who had bought the first cushion covers, spoke up. My entire social circle wants Amina's work. She's booked months in advance. That's not luck. That's skill. One of Amina's students, a young woman named Hira, added, She's teaching me embroidery. She's an excellent teacher. Better than any I've had before. Even some of the male vendors defended them. Yusuf is one of the best carpenters in the region, said a furniture merchant.
He doesn't need anyone's money.
And if he's smart enough to marry a talented woman, that makes him wise. Not weak. Rashid looked around and realized he was surrounded by people who weren't just defending Yusuf and Amina. They were attacking him. His reputation, his credibility, his power. You're all fools, Rashid spat. You'll see. This whole thing is unnatural. A blind woman can't be successful. It goes against the natural order. Yusuf finally spoke, and his voice was calm but firm. The only thing unnatural here is your need to hurt people who've done nothing to you except exist. You gave me Amina as a punishment, thinking I'd suffer. Instead, you gave me the greatest gift of my life. The joke was on you, Rashid. It always was, the crowd murmured in agreement. Some even laughed. Rashid's face turned red with humiliation and rage. He had come to reassert his dominance, to prove that his word still mattered. Instead, he had been publicly humiliated by the very people he tried to destroy. He stormed off, but the damage was done. Over the next few weeks, people started avoiding Rashid. His cruelty wasn't funny anymore. It wasn't powerful. It was just petty and small. Merchants stopped giving him preferential treatment. People stopped inviting him to important events. Even his own workers began to respect him less, having seen him lose face to a carpenter and his blind wife. Rashid tried to stay in the village, tried to maintain his position. But everywhere he went, he was reminded of his failure. He saw Yusuf and Amina walking together, happy and successful. He saw people greeting them with genuine warmth and respect. He saw everything he had tried to destroy not just surviving but flourishing. Finally, unable to stand the constant reminder of his defeat, Rashid made a decision. He packed up his things and left the village permanently. He told people he had business elsewhere, that he was moving to better opportunities. But everyone knew the truth. He was running away from his own failed revenge. Hassan, hearing of Rashid's departure, went to visit Yusuf and Amina. He stood at their door, nervous and ashamed. "I owe you both an apology," he said when Amina answered. "Especially you, daughter. I treated you terribly. I gave you away like you were worthless. I was wrong about everything." Amina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You were wrong, father. You hurt me deeply, but you also accidentally gave me a chance at real life, a life with dignity and respect. I won't forget what you did, but I'm choosing to forgive you anyway. Not for your sake, but for mine." Hassan cried then, tears of shame and relief. "Thank you. Thank you." As he left, Yusuf put his arm around Amina. "That was generous of you." "It was necessary," Amina replied. "Holding on to anger would only hurt me. Rashid is already gone, destroyed by his own bitterness. I won't let bitterness destroy me too." That night, the village felt different. Lighter somehow. The man who had ruled through fear and cruelty was gone. And in his place was a new story. A story about dignity, respect, and the surprising ways that good can come from intended harm. Rashid had tried to write a story of punishment and suffering, but Yusuf and Amina had rewritten it into something else entirely. Something beautiful. Something that would be told in that village for generations to come. 10 years had passed since the wedding that was meant to be a mockery. The small house at the edge of the village had transformed completely. It was larger now, with additions built carefully over the years. The workshop had expanded even more. But the biggest change wasn't in the buildings. It was in the people who lived there and the community that surrounded them. Yusuf was working in his shop one afternoon when he heard children's laughter coming from the house. He smiled, recognizing the sounds. Layla and Ahmed, the two orphans he and Amina had adopted 5 years ago, were playing in the courtyard while their mother worked. Layla was 12 now, bright and curious. She had been 6 when she came to them, a quiet girl who had lost her parents to illness. Ahmed was 10, energetic and talkative. He had been abandoned as a baby at the mosque steps, and the village had struggled to find anyone willing to take him in. But Yusuf and Amina had welcomed them both without hesitation. "Mama, I can't get this stitch right," Layla called out, frustration in her voice. "Bring it here," Amina replied. "Let me feel what you're doing." Layla had no interest in embroidery at first. She wanted to climb trees and run with the boys. But watching her mother work, seeing the respect people gave her, something had shifted. Now she was learning the craft, though she was still impatient with the slow, detailed work it required. Amina felt the fabric her daughter had been working on. "You're pulling too tight here. The fabric is bunching. Relax your hand. The thread should flow, not fight. But you make it look so easy." Amina laughed. "I've been doing this for years, sweet girl. You've been learning for months. Be patient with yourself." Ahmed ran into the room, his footsteps loud and excited. "Papa says dinner will be ready soon. He's making that rice dish we like." Over the years, Yusuf had become an excellent cook. It was one of the many ways he and Amina shared household responsibilities. He cooked, she managed their finances. They both taught the children. They both ran their respective businesses. True partnership in every way. That evening, as they all sat together for dinner, Ahmed asked a question. "Mama, some kids at school said mean things today." "About you being blind. They said blind people can't do important work." Amina smiled gently. "What did you say to them?" "I said they were wrong. I said you're the best embroiderer in the whole region and that you teach people and make money and do everything." "Good," Amina said, "because they are wrong. But Ahmed, those children probably learned that from adults who don't know better. Try not to be too angry with them. Instead, show them the truth through your actions and ours." Layla added, Mama has taught me that people see what they expect to see. We have to show them something different. Yusuf looked at his family with profound contentment. This right here was everything he had ever wanted. Not wealth or status, but love, respect, and purpose shared among people who cared for each other. The embroidery school had grown significantly. What started with a few students meeting in their home had become a proper workshop building next to the house. Amina now had 3 assistant teachers, all women she had trained herself. 2 of them were older women who were losing their sight. One was completely blind like Amina. They taught not just embroidery, but also confidence, independence. The belief that disability didn't mean inability. Young girls who came to learn often arrived shy and uncertain. They left with skills, but more importantly with pride. They had seen what was possible. They had learned from a woman who proved every day that limitations could be overcome. Yusuf's carpentry had evolved too. Inspired by his life with Amina, he had started creating adaptive furniture and tools. Tables with raised edges so items wouldn't roll off easily, kitchen tools with textured handles for easy identification, walking sticks with different carved patterns for different purposes. Other families with disabled members started coming to him. A man who had lost his hand in an accident needed special tools. A child born with weak legs needed a modified chair. An elderly woman going blind needed furniture she could navigate safely. Yusuf created solutions for all of them. His reputation spread. He wasn't just a carpenter anymore. He was an innovator, designing things that made life easier for people others had given up on. One spring morning, a delegation arrived from the capital city. They were from a charitable organization that worked with people with disabilities. They had heard about Yusuf and Amina, about their work and their impact. "We'd like to document your methods," the leader of the delegation explained. "What you've both created here, this combination of practical innovation and skill development, it could be replicated in other places. You could help people all across the country." Amina and Yusuf looked at each other. They had never imagined their simple life would have impact beyond their village. But the truth was undeniable. They had proven something important. They had shown that respect and opportunity could transform lives. "We'll help however we can," Yusuf said. Over the next few months, experts came and went, studying their methods, interviewing their students, documenting Yusuf's adaptive designs. A small book was published, telling their story and sharing their techniques. The book reached places they never expected. Other villages started embroidery schools for blind women. Carpenters began creating adaptive furniture. Parents of disabled children read the book and started seeing their children differently, seeing possibility instead of limitation. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Yusuf and Amina sat together in the garden that Amina had planted by touch, identifying each herb and flower by feel and scent. It had grown beautiful over the years, a little oasis of color and fragrance. "Do you remember the wedding?" Yusuf asked. "Everyone staring, Rashid smirking, thinking he had ruined my life?" Amina laughed. "I remember being terrified. I thought you would regret marrying me within a week." "I've never regretted it for a single moment," Yusuf said seriously. "You've given me more than I could ever list. Purpose, partnership, a family. You've made me a better person." "You gave me something more precious," Amina replied softly. "You gave me the chance to see myself as I truly am. Not through the eyes of people who pitied me or dismissed me, but through the respect you showed me from the very first day. You saw a person when everyone else saw a problem." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of their children playing inside, the evening birds singing, the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. "Rashid thought he was punishing you," Amina said. "He thought giving you a blind wife would ruin your life." "He gave me the greatest gift imaginable," Yusuf replied. "He just didn't know it. He couldn't see value in you because he never learned to see value in anyone except himself." Inside the house, Layla was showing Ahmed her latest embroidery work. The boy examined it with genuine admiration. "It's really good, Layla." "Mama's going to be proud." "You think so?" Layla asked, pleased. "I know so. And when I finish the chair I'm making with Papa, we'll both have made something useful, just like them." The children had learned the most important lesson their parents could teach them. That worth comes from character and effort, not from whether your body works the way others expect, that everyone has gifts to offer if given the chance. That dignity is a right, not something you have to earn. News of their anniversary spread through the village, and people came by throughout the day to offer congratulations. Not out of obligation, but out of genuine affection. Over the years, Yusuf and Amina had become beloved figures in the community. Hassan came too, older now and slower. He had become a regular visitor, trying in small ways to make up for his past failures. He brought a gift, a beautiful fabric he had picked out carefully. "For your embroidery work," he said to Amina. "The merchant said it's the finest he has." "Thank you, Father," Amina said, accepting it graciously. Their relationship would never be what it could have been, but it had healed somewhat. Forgiveness had created space for a fragile new connection. As evening approached, the village gathered in the courtyard for a small celebration. Someone brought food, another brought music. Children ran and played while adults talked and laughed. An old woman named Zara, who had been one of Amina's first embroidery students, stood up to speak. 10 years ago, many of us thought this marriage was a disaster waiting to happen. We were wrong. These two have shown us what real partnership looks like, what respect looks like, what love looks like. Others nodded and added their own thoughts. The baker talked about how Yusuf had built him special shelving after he injured his back. A mother spoke about how Amina had taught her blind daughter to be independent. A young man mentioned the modified tools Yusuf had created for his father, who had lost his sight to diabetes. The stories went on and on. Lives touched. People helped. A community changed by the simple power of two people treating each other, and everyone else with dignity. As the celebration wound down and guests departed, Yusuf and Amina sat together under the stars. Layla and Ahmed had fallen asleep inside, tired from the excitement. "Do you think Rashid ever realized what he actually did?" Amina asked. "I doubt it," Yusuf replied. "Men like him rarely do. They're too busy looking for the next way to hurt someone to notice when their plans backfire." "I hope he found peace somewhere," Amina said. "Carrying that much bitterness must be exhausting."